So welcome to A Secret Quest, discovering an American historical mystery. My name is Stephen V. O'Rourke. I am the main producer of this podcast and main researcher for the information contained in it. So in this edition, we're covering an article published in Atlantis Rising magazine. This is original research regarding the discovery of a symbolic geometric design incorporated into the city planning of San Francisco. Also discussion regarding the information that's published in a series of articles published in Atlantis Rising magazine. The original articles came out in about 15 years ago. So here's a cover of the first one. San Francisco Pyramid Saga is mentioned on the cover. This was originally issue number 55, which was February 2006. It had a follow-up article in the next year. It was called San Francisco, Philadelphia, the Masonic Connection, May-June 2007. That was issue number 63. Both of the articles were edited by Doug Kenyon. He's the publisher of the magazine Atlantis Rising, and he's the webmaster of AtlantisRising.com, where you can get both of these issues, the paper edition or a PDF version, and look at the original articles as they appeared. So the information in the original article covered the Freemasons and looked at them establishing themselves there in the late 1840s, in the immediate after effect of America taking California and the founding of San Francisco. First official Freemasonic meeting took place on October 17th, 1849, at a location later identified as 728 Montgomery Street. Kind of an important place if you follow through on some of the stuff in the article. The main person responsible, at least according to the research I had done at that point, was a person named Jasper O'Farrell. He was a native of Ireland. I mentioned he is a Freemason in the article, although I can't find the source for that at this point, so I'm just putting possible Freemason. And the main street that he made, which was to be very controversial, was the creation of Market Street. And according to the stories, he made it so that this would be sort of a pilgrimage to Mission Dolores, which was of course the main outpost at that point. And he made Market Street, the name supposedly was taken from Philadelphia. Of course, there was a major market street in Philadelphia. But at that point, I didn't have too much information about any of the connections to Philadelphia. So I left it at that. So O'Farrell was the surveyor, and he was also a major landowner. Another landowner was Henry W. Halleck, and he was also a land speculator. He made a great deal of money prior to the Civil War and in the wake of San Francisco becoming a part of the United States. I don't have it in the article, but Halleck was a great researcher of all of the land deals that had been made in California, and he was one of the military leaders in the taking of California. So he knew what was what. He knew what legal grounds he could take some of the land and make money off of it. And he did do deals with O'Farrell. One of the main things he did in the very early days of the city was financing construction of this building known as the Montgomery Block. This building figures prominently in the saga, and it was located almost precisely where that Freemasonic meeting had taken place. So if you, in fact, one of my first trips into San Francisco when I had moved there in the late 1980s, I remember seeing the plaque commemorating the first Masonic meeting. And of course, it was, he was in the building right next to Transamerica building. According to my story, one of the things that's important is the creation of this other avenue. And it's believed that Halleck was the one who originally voiced the idea of having a road coming out of Montgomery Street. It was originally called Montgomery Avenue and officially added to the map circa 1772. Halleck was a major military leader, and he was stationed at the military outpost down near Fort Mason, and he needed a way to get to Montgomery Block, where he was also a lawyer. So the original dirt road path was created under Halleck's direction, apparently. The other information in the article, I went into mentioning Freemasonic lodges that were formally created, and the creation of the Grand Lodge of California. Also mentioned the old City Hall, which had the kind of a haunting name, Hall of Records, constructed constructed at a strategic spot on the street alignment. Also, the construction of the large Masonic Hall on the corner of Montgomery and Post. So, in a real sense, the pyramid was completed at an early point, as far as looking at it from a map point of view, and the important buildings that were constructed. So that was so around 1772, you could say the pyramid of San Francisco came into its first incarnation. So there is the alignment highlighted. We're looking at the map of San Francisco, 1872. The street alignment is evident. You could use Hyde as the base. It is parallel to Montgomery Street. Montgomery Avenue and Market Street create the diagonal, and the shape of a truncated pyramid is evident, and I highlighted it and this image was sent to Atlantis Rising. It was not used in this article, but it was used in a later article. Okay, so this is 1864, but formally Montgomery Avenue was not added until 1872. So if you're confused as to what Montgomery Avenue is, it's now Columbus Avenue. So if you go from Hyde up Columbus Avenue to Montgomery, that's one side. If you go down Montgomery to Market, that's the truncated top, and if you go from Montgomery down to Hyde, you have the other end. So at that end was the City Hall, the Hall of Records, and if you go from Hyde, from Market to Columbus, you have that base. You could expand on it at different streets, and we'll go into that further in other podcasts, but that was the original conception of it. The article went on to cover other issues that were important to me at that point. One of them was the visit of Albert Pike to the city of San Francisco in the 1880s. So I mentioned some of the activities of the Freemasons at that point. I also touched on the similarity of this design with the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, which to historians of American history should realize that prior to 1882, really, hardly anyone in the country knew that there was a reverse of a Great Seal, and certainly couldn't describe it for you. But here we have it incorporated into the city of San Francisco at a very early point. Also in the article, I mentioned stuff that happened after the 1906 earthquake and the popularity of this architectural firm known as Fayville and Bliss. They designed the second Freemasonic temple, and that was placed at the corner of Van Ness and Market. And then also I mentioned in the article the next Masonic auditorium was created on opposite Grace Cathedral, and if you look at the street alignment, you'll see that it's in a very significant area of the pyramidical shape. So this was basic information, just stuff that I had come across from internet websites and newspaper articles and a few books that may have touched on it. So I kind of collated it all into creating this story about the city of San Francisco and see if it made any sense. Doug Kenyon thought it did. Oh, of course, the article ended with the destruction of Montgomery Block and the eventual creation of the Transamerica building on the exact location of the Montgomery Block. And of course, we know that building is called the Pyramid Building. So that was the gist of what I was trying to say with the basic information that I had. Reaction to the article is very limited. Doug Kenyon was receptive to further articles and research, and he's published some of my work even up until a recent time. The only other major researcher that mentioned it is Scott Onstadt. He's the author of a unique book called Secrets in Plain Sight, and he did a few podcasts where he mentioned my work. I think it was himself. He did extensive research on a lot of the geometry incorporated into San Francisco and the entire Bay Area. It's quite fascinating. Whereas mine is basically limited. I'm limiting myself to this specific region of San Francisco. He's got a little bit of a different viewpoint as to what he's looking at, and his research is quite fascinating. But other than that, no mention from other sources, similar to Atlantis Rising magazine. That could be for various reasons. So ironically, I ended this article with a mention that perhaps we could get more information about this in some old California library. Thanks to the internet and internet archives, I think I have definitely stumbled on to information that certainly would have been in an old Masonic library at some point. And what I had in the article really was, this article was a tip of the iceberg, and I'll share my research in future podcasts. So anyway, that's the San Francisco Pyramid article, that San Francisco Pyramid Saga article that appeared in Atlantis Rising in 2006, February 2006. And it was nice for Doug Kenyon to be receptive and publish the article. He's published other stuff, and we'll go into the second article in the next podcast.